Hello, Mouse Hunt, and welcome to Feedback Friday. Today is, I have no idea what the date is today. What is it? It is March 4, 2022. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everybody in the chat. Welcome. Hello to Math Awakening. Joni, hello to you. Dancing in the chair and maybe in the air, eh? Rocking out to the intro music. Hello, Christopher. Morning to fellow hunters. Well, morning to you as well, Christopher. Alex, wow, actually got here while the music is still going. Well, welcome, Alex. Arriving a little bit earlier than usual, I take it. Hello to you. This time we shall draw a hopeful egg with Dave. Hello, Math. Okay, morning, Dave. Morning to you as well. KDM with us in the chat. Hello. Flaming Gun Gaming, hello to you as well. Saying hello to everybody in the chat. Would be here. Jonathan, Shira, Gene. It's Friday, Dave. Happy Friday to you, Gene. Suzanne, hello to you as well. And there's Alex saying good morning again. Well, today everybody thought we could see what comes up, play things a little bit by ear, see what feedback topics we can cover. I do want to dive into the shops update a little bit as well. I know we touched on that a couple Feedback Fridays ago. It's coming along well. Thank you for everybody who submitted the contact form to kind of help out test. We're doing a little bit of a closed beta test as much as that test server can handle. It was starting to sweat a little bit this week as we added some more people, but we want to see if we can open up the taps a little bit further. So, thank you everyone who expressed interest in there. I want to dive in on Feedback Friday here and maybe demo a few more of the shops. I don't know if we can look at every single shop, but we'll try to get through as many as we can. Get some feedback there. But even, initial impressions on the birthday as well. If anyone has any kind of feedback sentiments to share, we'll just kind of hang out and chat for a little bit. Hopefully it all works out. Final heart in the chat. Good morning and happy Mouse Hunt birthday. Yes, indeed. Happy birthday to Mouse Hunt. It's coming up. Is it the 7th or the 8th? That's like a sin to me not to be able to have that memorized. Of course, it's the 7th. It's coming up. Let's check my profile and see when I signed up for the game. For some reason, I always think it's the 8th. I don't know why. All right, that's hello from Singapore. Well, hello back to you. Happy birthday, everybody, says Math. Well, tell you what then. Why don't we fire up? Let me see if this is working first. Yes, I've got the shops update ready to go. Hey, it worked. Suzanne says, low Slayer drop rate from Gilded Party Scrolls. Well, you can kind of get through those pretty quick, but it is the same, as far as I know, as last year. I don't think that's been touched in quite some time. So it says, nothing much new for this birthday event, so not too many comments there. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that in and of itself, a little bit of feedback. No guarantees. We don't know for sure. It's a long way out. Heck, this birthday event just started up, but in the back of our minds, we're thinking we'd like to reimagine the kind of what we do to celebrate the birthday next year, but we'll see. So that's kind of good too from the lens of that feedback, and I'm sure we'll dive into things a little bit more as the event winds down. That'll probably be an excellent Feedback Friday topic. Kind of maybe start even brainstorming, getting some ideas. What was exciting and what's not so exciting. What should we draw an inspiration from for years to come as well. Final Heart, the Slayer drop rate from Gilded Party Scrolls is amazing already, basically double what it was 2 years ago. It's definitely higher than the regular scrolls, that's for sure. But it's the type of thing, those are kind of very valuable scroll cases, so they're kind of they're a little few and far between, and that's definitely intentional, so that not everyone's just swimming in infinite Slayer scrolls, because they're extremely rewarding as well. But I definitely can understand the sentiment when you have your eyes set on one. It's kind of like, well, you don't know when the next one's going to appear, but hey, if you put together a good team of friends that you're working on maps with, the odds of at least one of you finding them is a little bit higher than each individual. So it might be a good case of, it is a multiplayer part of the game to band together with some friends and don't go it alone. Flamin says, sad there's no new trap, so you'll just be shooting for ultimate charms, hoping to get 4 for the Valor Rift. Fair enough. And part of the thing, that little reservation we have, is we try not to add things for the sake of adding them too often. I think over the years, that's gotten us into a little bit of trouble when we're putting together an event. Maybe there isn't that just right, perfect idea for reward structure, but we just kind of force the issues. Like, well, we'll add something for the sake of adding it. Uh, and maybe that's all well and good in the first few years of the game. But as we are about to celebrate our 14th year, that has amassed to there's a lot of stuff, especially charms, as you can imagine. There are quite a few charms in the game. There's a lot of traps. It's even just hard to remember, where did all this come from? What does it do? What do I use where? So now we try to be a little bit more intentional and wait for those just right moments where we have the idea to add something. It's like, well, yeah, the game really needs this right now, or this is a great idea. So that that expression, the more of something there is, the less special each one becomes, and just slowly over the years, as it become more and more traps, each one becomes a little less special. And tons of Riftios, collecting the Riftios. I think I would split mine a little bit personally. I'm going to split mine between a Hollow Heights party pack and the Living Garden as well. I get a few of those petals and what have you. Dean, did you bring a birthday cake to your party here today? Well, not quite. I don't have a cake on hand, no. Alex says, and now we have Elite Chrome Slayers. Yeah, that's a good point as well. You can upgrade them at the King's Arms. Might be a seldom forgot about thing that was added as part of Relic Hunter. Last Relic Hunter season changing. Scribdev, welcome to the chat. Says, thank you for adding the Slap Cat back. You finally got him. Congratulations, Scribdev. That was out of your suggestion on One Feedback Friday. And so, hey, all good things eventually come to be, I guess. But we did quite the collectibles audit, and then we kind of scheduled tasks for all of these collectibles that, for one way or another, they weren't limited edition, but they hadn't made their way into new iterations of events. And so I think by the end of this event season, we'll cover all the bases. I can't recall if there were any that were slotted to be added as part of the spring egg hunt. But if not, you should be pretty close if you've played the whole event season now to have all the collectibles collected. Jan, would it be possible to use up the stockpile of party charms, use them and trade up for stronger party charms? I think there's something already a little bit like that, but not with the base level, eh? No, it's with the extra parts. That's what I'm thinking of. They will roll up if you want to use them, and it's interesting too. There's a little proof of concept, if you will, with the Nonian track base that came out with the Great Winter Hunt. That's kind of a great way to more quickly roll up snowball charms. I wonder if a few of those charms that share that theme might need a little bit of that sentiment added as well. We're kind of swimming in Slayer scrolls. The problem now is the 100 ancient relic cost to convert them into Chrome Slayers. Head to perhaps the Froma Rift is a good place to maybe focus your efforts there. Chris, any new gilded skin coming for us to spend our gilded coins on? None in the immediate future, no. Final Heart, are there plans to improve the obtainability of ancient relics in the game, given that map costs have increased so much? Nothing in the immediate future, no. Like I said, Froma Rift is actually a pretty decent place if you need relics, as you can almost actively pursue them a little bit better than you could in other spots. But maybe even just more, that might be a good segue to get into the shops overhaul here, because one thing that didn't quite make it into the scope of this shop's update was the cartographer. So we ended up, originally we wanted to touch on all the shops, but especially even with charms. And the cartographer, the scope kind of increased quite a bit. So we started with the cheese shop and the trapsmith, and the trapsmith has been quite the job as well. But relatively new. A member of the team, Dev Jake, he's been doing an absolutely fantastic job. He's kind of taking this under his wing and working with the team, getting input from players. And it's been impressive how quickly he's gotten up to just the MouseHunt minutia and trivia that there is to know. So he's been hard at work kind of auditing the shops. And with the goal of reducing the need to travel. Like right off the bat, cheese shop. Pretty well everywhere now in the game you can buy standard cheese that's at least somewhat relevant to your location. I think cheddar cheese still falls by the wayside, maybe somewhere around Tribal Isles, if I recall correctly. But like things like Swiss Saint Brie and eventually Gouda start appearing everywhere you go. And I know that's handy as well. If you're in Elub Shore and you need to refill on Gouda, you don't need to go and travel to Cape Claude, only just to immediately travel back to Elub. That's been great to see so far. That said, a few cheese things like the crafted cheeses that you can buy, that's kind of a little bit on the back burner. We had some technical challenges there in being able to have the shop sell the same item for multiple costs, as well as I don't know, in some newer areas you see it like the floating islands where you can buy 2 pieces of cloud cheesecake, or you buy a 2-pack and it immediately 2 pieces of cheese go into your inventory. That's a little bit of a workaround, this technical limitation. And so before we bring that to everywhere in the game, we kind of wanted to make sure we sit down and maybe do that right, because it would add a lot of kind of superfluous items. Samuel, make the golden shields stack. No immediate plans. It's something we're kind of looking at to hopefully maybe find a creative solution there. But the root of the issue is just it isn't linear, right? Like the $1 packs give you a month, and the 20 and the 40 give you 2 and 4 months. So the only way to really fix that right now is by giving less time for a $1 kit, and I don't think that'd be a very popular change. So it's something kind of, it's still on the drawing board. We're trying to figure that out, but it needs a little bit more of a creative solution. Interesting anecdote, I think we've maybe shared it before as well. All those years ago, I mean, it had to be, I don't know, maybe 12 years ago, the Golden Shield was sort of free t-shirt with every purchase. In fact, we gave no thought to what the bonus was. We just kind of made it +7 for lucky number 7. That was it. And it came out, no matter what you did, it just bumped your shield back up to a month. Like, hey, thanks for supporting the game this month. Here's a golden shield, just to kind of shine, and a shiny thing from the devs to say thank you so much for supporting the game this month, just to kind of help us meet our server costs on a month-to-month basis, and thank people who help us do that. But then it kind of, over the years, turned into something that is an integral part of the game, or something that a lot of players kind of put a lot of weight into, just having it as sort of a tool they're using while they're hunting. And so it no longer fits that original design intention of being sort of a nice to have, a little thank you, if you will, and now kind of needs to be incorporated into the game in a more cohesive way, the same way we'd approach adding traps and cheese and anything else that kind of modifies the way you play the game. And so it's a large project, and it's another one of those things. We don't want to make a change that makes it worse. So, it's just kind of sitting the way it is for now. Meme the Sheep says, will there be a chance of a full revamp birthday event next year? Yeah, there'd be a chance of it for sure. Chunk says, there's always Golden Jade map for Ancient Relics. That's an excellent one as well. Next time Ronza shows up, make sure you stockpile those Jade maps. That's a great way to refill your Ancient Relics. Final Heart, that's a good point about the Feroma Rift. It's been forgotten for a while, newer, shinier things, but that's a cool niche. Yeah, absolutely. That was some of the attention as well, to kind of give some sort of lucrative area where you can, if you're short on relics, there's at least something you can do to get them faster than normal. So the Feroma Rift is definitely a good option there. Scrib does have some feedback on the Coggy cheeses. Can we have the original Coggy tradable so we can share it with our friends? You understand it being off the market, but I'd like to share some with your friends. Just kind of rule of thumb, anything that is tradable goes on the marketplace as well, and just kind of that cheese is not meant to be marketable, so by extension it is not tradable. Otherwise it kind of invites this sort of trust trading system going on that gets a little bit odd. Prowling Tiger, are you doing dates on the birthday chest anymore? Last year's chest did not have a date on it. Yeah, correct. We only version the chests if we change the contents in a way that we can't carry forward. And so although we changed so that there's tokens in the chest, they were sort of directly transferable with the skins. So the only time we version chests, we don't do it every year. We only do it if we're going to significantly change what's inside the chest, so that there's no reservation. Should I open it now? Should I open it later? Eileen, you have 1,000+ relics during Lunar New Year in Feroma. Now you just need gilded maps to give you slayers. That's an excellent use of the Lunar New Year double and triple. Seeking out some relics, eh? See if we'll just make the chest shield stackable and not the donation ones. Might be a workaround to that problem. No, I don't think that would work either, because it's just odd, right? If a very easy to get thing, you open it 12 times and you get the same amount of shield as opening a very hard to get thing 4 times. Just doesn't make sense. So those small ones would have to give very little shield. They'd have to give a few hours or a day, and I think it's better the way it is than kind of nerfing all those chest times on all the kits that are easy to get. For stacking the Lucky Golden Shield, should be a scaling factor. You have the Lucky Golden Shield purchase, open something granting the Lucky Golden Shield. Perhaps you get 25% of the duration of the shield stacked added. Yeah, we've been throwing around. I wouldn't quite want to get into the weeds of a few different little idea stubs and different ways we could manage that. But basically, kind of doing away with the timer and turning it into something that's inside the kit that you get, and you can use a little bit of it to maintain your golden shield as much as you want, or you can use a lot of it to do other stuff. And that would help alleviate some of the awkwardness there of cool, like the shield's kind of a little easier to maintain, but there's an extra thing you can do with that resource, so that if you ever end up with just too much of it, well, there's still something you can be doing with it. I already have 3,000 relics, but 30 Slayer Scrolls won't take you long to get by. Well, you might have to do a few regulars in the meantime as well. It's always the choice to make. If you really have that many, like, do you invest the time in kind of getting more relics and stretch those out to bigger rewards, or are you okay with doing regular ones? Or heck, even if you have that many, you might want to open them up and maybe even discard ones that you don't want if you really have that, if you get to that point. Q asks, any timeline on the shop update? Maybe that's a good segue to kind of hunker in and focus in on the shop update. Nothing concrete. No, basically it's the type of thing, it's ready when it's ready. And just kind of the amount of data entry and work going into that, it's kind of hard to commit to a specific time frame. That's it. Things are going rather well. That's why we're kind of opening the taps and getting some more people to come in and help us out. And we're hoping by the end of next week we'll be able to kind of assess, okay, where are things looking right now, and hopefully come to a conclusion of when it could come out. But here I am in the town of Narnia, so this is, maybe no big surprises here. Kind of equipment you'd expect to see. There's been some adjustments to costs here and there as well. So kind of two big design objectives here are to make it so that wherever you're hunting, the shops sell at least somewhat relevant stuff to maybe where you just were or where you're going next. And as the game progresses, that's to help kind of new players who aren't studying the wiki, who aren't following a strategy guide per se, to still have tools within the game to see, this is the trap I have, oh, this other one exists and it's a little bit better, or oh, this one, this is where it falls in sort of the hierarchy of bases and traps. So Town of Narnia, as you'd expect, not too many differences there. But another objective too, by lowering some of the costs, a few stats have changed on traps as well. So, it goes a little bit beyond just adding things to shops, but also affecting kind of the overall progression, because definitely something we see in feedback we get is somebody will be legendary and they just do not have enough gold to buy the legendary traps. And by the time they have enough gold, they've ranked up twice and the traps are relevant. And just the pacing is quite a bit off there. So we want to kind of go back with fresh eyes and the state of the game as it currently is in the pacing, and adjust the costs and some of the stats as well to bring the traps a little bit more in line with being rank appropriate for the mice that you're facing off against. So not a whole lot changing kind of as you go throughout Narnia, things you'd expect to see. Let's travel to the lab here. And, cheese shop, as you'd expect it. Even the mausoleum now will have a cheese shop as well. Like if you need some cheese and you happen to be there, you don't have to travel to the lab, only just to travel straight back. Maybe you're using some of your potions and you need some cheese for some reason. But here's a good example. Here I'm in the lab, and you can see the stone base, the explosive base, and now even the dehydration base has been converted from crafting into a shop purchase. You crafted it just out of salt, which you just had to buy from the shop and create, and the blueprint. And so just anything that was crafted, we've kept the item costs if they're loot drops, but if they're just things you buy from the shop, it's just kind of extra steps to achieve that thing, and makes it just harder for newer players to find and discover. And so all those gold costs have just been straight up converted into the gold costs you see in the shop. But it's a good example. You can see, okay, I should probably be somewhere around here. If you don't have an event base or something else going on, maybe I should have the explosive base. If I'm a little bit behind, I might have the stone. And here's the dehydration base. Oh, this is a pretty lucky base, and you can kind of discover it. Whereas right now it's hidden away. You have to read the description of a blueprint somewhere to be able to compare it and see where it lands in kind of the hierarchy of bases when you're at this stage of the game. Swift says, will traps remain craftable only? You assume past LE traps and chrome traps will only be available from crafting. No hard and fast rule. I mean, as a guiding principle, we're going to use the shops a lot more. As you've probably noticed in newer updates, we don't use crafting very often as much as the shops. And we've seen just way more players actually end up obtaining these things because they find them and they discover them. And so hopefully, too, you can kind of get the perspective. And I'd imagine a lot of people tuning into Feedback Friday, or if you're active on the Discord or read the wiki a whole lot, these things don't come as a surprise to you. But there's a kind of a whole large group of hunters who don't participate in all that, and they're going through the game and they're not quite as social, and they just never even know these things exist to begin with. And so kind of that's a big guiding principle of moving some things into the shop. That's a crafting will have a place. Like the Dragon Slayer cannon is still a crafted trap, and there's a few things here and there where crafting still makes a lot of sense. Bob asks, what if the trap shop has your current setup at the top as well? Be easier to compare. That is kind of there. It was a little bit outside the scope of this overhaul of adding kind of UI stuff. Kind of the big bottleneck. We had a lot of design resources available, but not a lot of kind of interface and programming. So it was just kind of a good fit for a lot of spreadsheet work, overhauling costs, changing numbers. But unfortunately, we didn't quite have the time to reimagine some interfaces. And if you browse weapons and bases, you can see what you currently have armed, but it's not always sort of maybe relevant to what you're shopping at that exact moment. So, lots of ideas of a much grander feature, being able to easily compare different pieces of equipment and help make some choices, but just kind of the scope would turn into several weeks of just iterating over interfaces and stuff. So just there's nobody available to work on it. Scrib asks, is this year confirmed to be the last year of the factory, or is it getting reworked, or are we going to see something entirely new? No confirmation, but definitely something we're open to. We're kind of getting feedback on, and it's been a few years with the Super Brief factory, so if all goes well, I think it would be nice to reimagine it next year, but it's just hard to know this far out and with any sort of certainty. He says it'd be great if we could buy party charms with leftover super tokens instead of duplicate skins. Yeah, perhaps. Although there's always something in the vending machine. You can buy the starter packs if you're really stuck, and even some of that will sell back for gold. So hopefully you won't have a lot of loose change left in your pocket. Where buying 3 party charms is kind of a similar amount of loose change anyway. Stephen, I can't wait to buy another dehydration base. That's a fair observation that most things have been updated with, as we do now, with max inventory quantity of 1. So you'll see here in the dehydration base, I can afford 1, and the inventory max is indeed 1. So when I buy one, I won't be able to buy another one. But look at weapons in the laboratory as well. Kind of similar here. I think the lab at the moment, unless I'm mistaken, only sells these shadow traps. So a few physical things added as well, and kind of give newer players a sense of what traps should I probably have around this time, or about this spot that I'm in the game. Maybe what goals should I be setting for myself. You can see, I think the death bot's been made less expensive. I think it was about 250,000 gold before. Same with the force field trap. That's a good example. Let's go to the mausoleum. And pretty sure there's no cheese shop in the mausoleum as it is right now, but that's been added. That's kind of a universal truth now. I can't even think of a single area in the game that does not have a cheese shop. So you don't have to travel to buy cheese, only to just move straight back to the location you're actually hunting in. And the mausoleum is pretty well copied what is sold in the laboratory. So maybe you're in the mausoleum as a new player, and it's a pretty good place to earn gold at that level. And you're saving up to buy the death bot. So even though you wouldn't use the death bot in the mausoleum, you'd be using shadow at this stage. It's still there so you can see how much it costs. You don't have to go back to the lab just to see, wait, how much did the death bot cost? You don't need to load up a wiki or Google it or anything. There's a way in the game you can quickly and easily see how much it costs, and it makes a lot of sense. If you want to know how much something costs, you would go to a shop to see it. Just like you could go to the grocery store to see how much a loaf of bread is. Christopher says, any thoughts on adding some insane quests to allow new players to get some of the older limited edition trap spaces? Nothing's set in stone, but at least right now, limited edition means just that. They do not come back, so we can kind of put that to rest. There's no plans to change that in the immediate future. Nathan says, if crafted traps had an adventure task like Zuriel's, could help discovering the crafted items you decide to keep. Yeah, it's in a bit of a tricky spot. I mean, building the trap to capture Zuriel is baked right into the gameplay of it. Like, you cannot capture him without that trap. Whereas, if there was an adventure to earn the mouse death bot, well, what if I don't want the mouse death bot? And it's like, well, I should do that anyway. So I don't think it quite fits the state of feedback to let me know, okay, here's things I can buy and here's how much gold they cost. Adventures are a lot better to kind of guide you through the storyline, sort of these canonical objectives to achieve and fulfill sort of the hero role that your character's in. It doesn't quite serve the same purpose as buying supplies from a shop. If anything, they're sort of a support role in your adventures. I'm doing this adventure and I have to get Mosvina von Vermin. And it's like, well, what tools do I need to accomplish that? Maybe somebody thinks I need a death bot to farm potions in the lab effectively. That's going to be my strategy. That's going to be how I accomplish that goal. But there isn't an adventure for every single trap in the game. That way, they become things that you use to complete adventures. They're not the adventures themselves. Jonathan asks, any news on the fabled forest area? It's starting to come along quite well, but maybe a little too soon to share too much. Safeful says birthday definitely needs a rework, not that appealing as other events. Yeah, fair enough. And even just maybe not in the short or medium term, but long term, I can kind of see events just getting toned back a little bit. Maybe we get to a place even where to celebrate our birthday, there's something fun going on, but it doesn't necessarily need to be a dedicated event with objectives. And instead, we could be adding more, permanent adventures to the game. Makes it a lot easier for rewards as well. Like, hey, there's no new trap for the birthday. Well, there's not enough new content in the game to facilitate an interesting reward. And so it's a lot easier to add new traps as we release new areas because there's a more sense of progression and pacing, and higher level areas are coming out. It's a lot easier to come up with upgrades and rewards that just make sense. You're not kind of scratching your head like, well, just something for the sake of something, and it ends up not being very interesting. Steven says, missed out on the Snow Barrage, not much use, but nice to have it. Well, that's just the nature of limited edition. I was there at the time. QS, is the Aqua Base nerfed? It's probably the strongest trap component for the cost. Maybe we'll continue on our shop cost here. I don't think the stats of anything has been reduced, as far as I can recall. I mean, don't hold me to that 100%. The cost has probably been lowered. It might be a safe bet, though. I'll scooch over to Digby here. And, again, kind of some bases relevant to the area, and they start to kind of look very cookie cutter. Copy and paste, if you will, as you can kind of see. Okay, this is a rough progression of the bases. Even when we get to Froma, you'll see the Bamboozler base make an appearance, but then it kind of carries forward after that. Once you discover the Bamboozler base, it's stocked in a lot of shops that come after that, so you don't need to remember, where do I go back if you want to buy the Bamboozler, or even just curious, what were the stats on the Bamboozler? I don't need to remember what shop happens to sell it to be able to check the stats. It kind of sticks around in a lot of the shops where it's relevant, at least at my level. The Digby drill bots here, I'm pretty sure this has been made quite a bit cheaper now. And I'm pretty sure the stats have increased. Does it not even have luck currently? Here, if I was clever, I'd have this copy, the actual copy of the game open at another window. Yeah, the drill bot has received a buff, right? Whereas right now, that's the Chrome drill bot. I don't own a drill bot. Well, can you imagine that? I don't own a drill bot. I was looking at the Chrome. Flame says, you love the birthday event and more packs in the machine would be cool. You love the token and vending machine concept. Yeah, it was definitely a very popular addition when we added it to the birthday event to kind of tie in. We're trying to give every event its own strong identity in terms of what it is and reward structure. And the birthday event's all about cheese, primarily Super Brie. I mean, especially if you're a newer player, it is probably this big boon of Super Brie that you get injected. You're not doing a lot of treasure maps, and you don't have these other sources of obtaining it. The birthday comes along, and it just gives you a big shot in the arm, basically, of a whole lot of Super Brie. You can smash it into Magic Essence. It's definitely going to be handy as you kind of progress through the game, that's for sure. But if you're pretty well stocked up in that sense, the vending machine gives a lot of area-specific stuff to kind of help you chase cheese in other areas as well. Q, the base in currently armed section doesn't automatically update when you arm a new base in the shop. That's a good observation as well. As always, if you spot that type of stuff, feel free. You can get in touch up here, if you hit the contact us button, and you can hit bug, and you can submit your bug report through there. It's always good to explain kind of what happened, what did you expect was going to happen, and what do I need to do to reproduce that. When a programmer sits down to work on a bug, usually the very first thing they do is they want to see it happen with their own eyes, and that makes it a lot easier to kind of find why is it happening, and that's ultimately the first step to fixing something, is understanding why it happens. Mars says, non-MouseHunt question, are you guys working through those changes in Scrum Agile method? Yeah, interesting question. A bit of a hybrid, I would say, between traditional project management and Agile. It kind of depends on the project we're working on. Definitely the art side of things is a little bit more traditional because it's a lot easier to scope out every little thing, basically, and a lot of things like mice items, it's a little bit more predictable how long they take to do. Obviously, some take longer than others depending on some things and what's going on. But there are a lot less open-ended problems, where in the world of programming, sometimes it's open-ended. It's hard to know how long something's going to take, basically, is exceptionally difficult, and especially until you start. You almost have to get halfway done before you're confident that you are indeed halfway done. You might realize, well, no, I think I'm only 10% done, or hey, I'm 90% done. That was easier than I thought it was going to be. So I often equate it to you're doing a renovation and a contractor comes in. They can't just look at the room and say, it's going to take 3 weeks to renovate. No, they kind of have to take some measurements, ask some questions, and then often, too, after they get started, they open up a wall and they're like, oh, I didn't know there's a vent here. We got to relocate the vent. That's going to take an extra couple days to move that. Oops, there's a building code violation here. This isn't up to code anymore. We're going to have to put in a big beam. I got to get an engineer in here to assess this. That tends to happen in programming too. Like once you dig into things, especially maintaining existing code, you run into like, oh, I can't do this. I have to rebuild this whole other system before I can even finish the feature I'm working on. So it can be difficult. Script says you wouldn't mind events being toned down to get a bit more special resource related to birthday, super brie, egg charms, resources, Halloween potions. The winter hunt resources, fun but not required. Yeah, that's a little bit what we're going for. Give each their own unique reward structure and identity. Matt Rowland, welcome to you, says, hello, joined late, going back to watch from the beginning, enjoying the event. Well, when you get to this moment, hello to you. I assume you're watching it fast forwarded, so I'll be a little bit of a chipmunk up until now. Q, any plan to make the airship cosmetics a separate category and special so it doesn't clunk up the miscellaneous category on the app? Yeah, it definitely needs a lot of work for sure, and it's one of many moving parts. Matt, we dumped the agile method at my employer, was causing more issues. We're back to traditional project management. Interesting, eh? Things kind of go in cycles sometimes. But, like I said, we're a little bit of a hybrid. It's about kind of creating open-ended tasks and leaving time to follow up on things and after kind of building some specifications. But in a lot of ways, we're fortunate in we're solving problems that are very similar to problems we've solved in the past. And when you run into those, it's a lot easier to determine how long something's going to take and know the complexity of something before you get into it. Ryan, for the vending machine, would it be possible to get cheeses sequestered in specific slots? Like you can't get Linari petals and plum herbs in the same pack. It's always a tricky balance to strike. And always welcome feedback to kind of tune that, right? Because there's elements of, well, should everything just be in the shop and you just pick exactly what you want? Or there's the element of surprise, of the highs and the lows. If you open up one, it was a little bit better than last time, but it's an ongoing kind of balance to kind of get that right and create those feelings of excitement without monotony, and certainly we take things to heart. Looking at the jewels and floating islands, it's the type of thing where it's just plain as day. You look at it and you're like, that's a lot of jewels I need, and it creates that feeling of like, okay, that means I got to do this many times, got to do this many, oh, it's going to take a while. And there's just something inherently fun and exciting about, well, in the next one it might be a little extra good, and there's balance there. You don't want anything too far on one end of the spectrum or not, but that's some of the motivation to maybe not just put all the cheese in the cheese shop of the factory and you just spend the tokens however you want, because it just becomes a little monotonous. When you start your journey, you know exactly what the experience is going to be and where you're going to end up by the end of the journey. It's more interesting if there's a few twists and turns along the way. You get a speed boost that you weren't expecting, or you kind of slow down a little bit at a time you weren't expecting. It forces you to kind of make some choices, and the journey is actually an interesting one rather than completely predictable. But for sure, always welcome feedback to kind of fine tune those a little bit, find them, get them into a spot where it's exciting without kind of being a letdown either. Poke asks, any plan to update the Sunken City HUD or to include other variants of Anchor Charms? None in the immediate future, no. Okay, Klexa, just want to say thank you for a great game. One of the only ones that I've continued playing beyond a week or two. Keep up the good work. I'm glad to hear you're enjoying the game. Thank you very much. I'm jumping around in the chat, I think. Snowy says, hi, I'm late. Welcome, Snowy, to the chat. Bram asks, not related to event, but is it possible to remove banished hunters from the scoreboard? It's not fun seeing them stealing a spot from legit players. Yeah, I mean, fair enough. That might be kind of interesting to look into. You ask, will there be a reason for banning a player be listed on the player's profile? Will the reason for... I don't think we'd get into too many nitty gritty. It's more just a little bit of feedback mechanism to know why isn't this person answering my friend request, or maybe they were causing some issues, maybe they were insulting some other players or in some way detracting from the fun of others. In some ways, it's nice to know, okay, that it's been taken care of. We don't have to worry about that anymore. If you were a player that was kind of having your fun negatively experienced by someone else, in some ways, it's good to kind of see, well, okay, they've been banished, which means they're not allowed to interact with other players in any way. So they can't join maps, they can't write on cork boards, that sort of thing, as well as a little feedback. So that person isn't actively playing the game. So, but to dive into the nitty gritty details of it might be a little bit more drama than needs to exist. Deborah says, happy birthday. Thanks for all your hard work over the last 14 years. You just returned to the game and so thankful for the new areas, events, and the thoughtful updates. Deborah, thank you so much. Glad to see you're enjoying the game. Q says, any chance to have a pack with only the best cheese but cost significantly more? I don't know. You can't always have everything you want in one convenient pack. If we kind of cruise around, I want to try to cruise around to as many shops as possible and kind of show them on stream as well to hopefully trigger some conversations here and get as much feedback as we can so we can feel confident that we're starting to take shape. Where am I hunting? At the bazaar. That was another thing that has bugged me for a long time. You can't see where you are while the horn is up. So again, here I'm in the bazaar, and hey, the Bamboozler base has made its appearance to see, like, hey, I'm also a 4-luck base with even better power. If you're using the dehydration, you just plain as day, you can, oh yeah, the Bamboozler. Maybe I should upgrade to that by now. And tactical is becoming a thing, so you can start to see some of the traps here. Here's a good example of a crafted trap being converted into a shop purchase for the same costs. You'll see here and there some things are item costs, some things are item requirements. We definitely want to keep things so that crafting it at the moment is the exact same experience as purchasing it from the shop. So in that regard, a lot of things that are costs when you craft remain costs in the shop. Eventually, after this is released, there'll be sort of this period of grandfathering where things can be both crafted and be purchased from the shop in case someone's in the middle of it. There's collecting the materials they need to craft something. The crafting recipe still exists, so they can still go about creating the trap that way. And at some date in the future that we haven't decided upon, we're going to delete all those crafting recipes, basically remove them from the game. They no longer exist. And so kind of the canonical way you will get the trap is through the shop. And so everyone will have the same experience going forward. Any chance for a twisted carmine egg this year, asks Swift. I don't think that one's on the table. Grant, I know we just started the birthday, but any insight into new eggs? I think we'll probably get into that in a different Feedback Friday because the spring egg hunt is still quite a ways out. But it's coming along quite well, actually. We've wrapped up work on the egg hunt today, actually. We're wrapping up a few loose ends, and we're going to start playtesting it on Monday. We'll visit the Toxic Spill, which is in an interesting spot in the game as well, in that it was kind of an experiment in an area that had all the titles, and it was technically the first Archduke content in the game. So here's the Aqua base. I'm pretty sure this has been made not as expensive, but maybe not. I'm sure someone in the chat can fill me in if the Aqua base does indeed cost 115k gold or not. Here's the Bamboozler base chilling out in the Toxic Spill, which it certainly isn't now. Washboard base has been converted from crafting into a shop purchase. The general stores have had quite a bit of an overhaul. I'm going to assume, no, that must be a loot drop. So now when you find the washboard base blueprints, you can purchase the washboard base from the shop rather than having to craft it. We've also added this in quite a few spots in Larry's Loot Lexicon, I guess specifically, and on mobile has support for it as well. But quite a few items, not every single item in the game, but we've done our best to pick a few important ones, especially in the beginning and mid-game. Add a hint of, here's somewhere where you can go to find this item. So where do I find the washboard-based blueprints, hunt hazmat, and lab technician mice in the toxic spill? So you kind of have a goal in mind. Now, how you go about finding those mice, hey, that's still kind of up to you to figure out and discover. Maybe depending on the area, the HUD might help you do that. Figure out what's the best cheese to use. What's the best way to go about it is kind of still in the player's hands, but it's just that. It's a hint. They're definitely not meant to be an exhaustive list of here's everywhere you can get it. The wiki's a great place to see that. If you want to see, I want a concrete list of every single mouse, no matter how rare of a drop it is, I want to see it. But we've tried to curate those hints to be just that, a hint to put you in the right direction. But it might not necessarily be the absolute best way. It might come down to what equipment you have available to you, what areas you've unlocked, what traps you have at your disposal. You might go about it in a different way, but at least it's a hint, something to put you on the right path. Diamond asked, did they add the stuck item in the vending machine might drop more than one? Unfortunately, no, we did not have time again this year, but it was a cute idea that we definitely sparked to that idea when we were first putting together. Unfortunately, we just kind of never had time to add that little bit of a bonus feature. Show us the SS Huntington and the Tribal Isles. Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep forging on here. Some of these will go a little bit quicker than others, that's for sure. Visiting Froma. Am I in the training grounds? I sure am. Again, here are those 3 familiar bases. And kind of again, they just sort of, there's not that many bases, so a lot of them kind of carry forward as you go, and a new player doesn't need to remember where to buy things. And a similar kind of arsenal of tactical traps available at the training grounds. I mean, this is kind of a good little demonstration of now all these shops are more or less the same, but some new ones get added. As you progress from the training grounds and you get to the dojo, you're going to have access to now the ambush trap. Here's the Onyx Mallet trap. I believe its cost has been dramatically lowered. Forgive me, I'm doing it from memory, but I think it might be 12 Onyx stones. It is only 3 now, because for a Grandmaster, by the time you go and get all those Onyx stones, you are long done with the dojo and you're ready to move on, and the trap is borderline becoming irrelevant at that point. So it's a good example of some pacing things where at the time, we thought this is one of the final areas in the game. We didn't know how long we'd keep making MouseHunt for. We thought, well, people were surely going to be getting bored of the game pretty soon. This is a lot of areas to work through. Happy to report we were very, very wrong. But it has left behind these artifacts where there are traps that are just hard for the sake of being hard. They were meant to be stretch goals of, okay, someone's going to eventually go and try to build the Onyx Mallet because they've stuck around and they're still playing the game, when most people would never get that far. Swift says, odd place to be able to buy the Bamboozler base. Fair enough, but I think it's only odd because it's not the way it currently is. If it was like that from the start, I think it would just kind of fit in, right? I think just kind of in our memories, we associate the Bamboozler base with the training grounds and Froma, but it's just a base you can use anywhere. It doesn't have any special effects, or it's not made from anything that you acquire from that area. Trevor says the browser version's been a little unstable with something went wrong. I believe the Studious Giorgio is looking into that right now. He was just saying this morning he was looking into some small issues, especially when you go to claim the Super Breed crate. You might get an error, and then when the page reloads, it's still claimed. So everything's working okay. It's the how it comes back. When you sound the horn, everything worked fine, but it communicates it back to the browser in a way that doesn't make any sense, and the browser's like, wait, what? It's like you placed your order for food, and the order arrived, but the person, announced it in a language you don't understand, and so you're like, what? Hold on. You get a little bit confused, but don't worry, your order still arrived. So I think these are all more or less the same. If we kind of dive into Bristlewoods a little bit, and Arcane starts to make an appearance, these ones might be kind of interesting as well. So again, these kind of bread and butter bases, if you can call them that, again, kind of appear until the moment where they're not really all that relevant, and they sort of fade away, and the trapsmith there stops carrying those goods. Obelisk of Slumber, or Obelisk, or none of the above. Something I'm probably mispronouncing. The slumber and the incineration here, you can see, I believe this has had its cost reduced. I can't recall. That actually looks like it might be right. Maybe it was more scrap metal before. But you can see it costs the slumber, so you don't need to buy it and smash it. At least you can do it all in one fell swoop right here. The pressure plate trap, I believe that is fewer runes than it used to cost, if I'm not mistaken. The arcane capturing rod of never yielding mystery, or the acronym for short, it has arrived in the shop, as well as the Ice Maiden. This one's a little bit of an outlier, but seen as one guiding principle we try to use. If you purchase it with things that you acquire from that area, it becomes relevant. Maybe you know you want to build the Ice Maiden, and you go off to start collecting runes and go seek out the frozen scroll from the Acolyte Mouse. Is that where you get it? Yes. Hey, hunt Acolyte Mouse in the Acolyte realm. Cool. You have a reference point to see how much it costs while you're actively collecting the runes, right? Whereas if it was only sold in Dracano, I was like, wait, how many runes do I need? You have to keep leaving it with, especially in the Acolyte realm. That kind of really stinks. I don't want to leave the Acolyte realm to see how much something costs. So that was kind of the thought process of putting that into the shop. There's a few that are a little bit, they might seem a little out of place at first, but it's that guiding principle of, well, I buy this trap using materials I acquire from this area. So will the shop update let us buy Ronza's airship and take over her role? Floating Islands, I think, is about as close as we'll get. So let's get to the Tribal Isles, because there is a whole lot of things in the Tribal Isles. And I know as I play, I keep going to my inventory instead of the Trapsmith. I know when I play through the game, the Tribal Isles is the place where a little bit of steam starts coming out of my ear, and I get confused because there's a lot going on. So you can see just the Bamboozler base, the Aqua base, the Stone base, and the Explosive base that were in other areas have sort of fallen by the wayside and been deemed, well, these aren't really relevant. If you didn't get them by now, you should probably forget them and start putting your sights on some of these other bases. Molten Shrapnel base makes an appearance in the shop. You buy it with Dragon Embers. So, hey, it's available in the Tribal Isles because acquiring Dragon Embers, it involves the whole cycle of the Tribal Isles to be getting those. This is a good example. Fulmina, I believe she can drop a Dragon Ember, but we haven't put that in the hint because it's not really a good encouraging way to go and seek out, especially in context of this, of going to get Dragon Embers. You're probably better off doing this, but maybe not. Ultimately, it's up to the hunter to decide the best way they want to go and get them, but it's a hint. It's at least a starting point for somebody. Cape Clod has a whole lot of traps here, that's for sure. It kind of covers all the bases. Even Shadow, if you looked ahead to the Jungle of Dread. Ancient Box Trap is available in the Trapsmith, and you can kind of play in as day, see all the costs. We kind of went back and forth a little bit. We did currently end up on keeping these as drops, so you still have to capture all the chieftains to get the blueprint pieces. But the last blueprint, I believe right now, to make the final blueprint, if you were going to craft the Ancient Box Trap, you buy one from the shop, you get 3 from the chieftains, you craft together the blueprint, and then you craft together the Ancient Box Trap. And now the cost of that blueprint in the shop has just been converted into the gold cost of the trap. So again, crafting still costs all the same resources, but it's just streamlined that way through the shop. Grant says it would be nice if the traps were grouped together by power types and sections. For sure, the interface here needs a little bit of love. We've tried to do the best we can with the tools we have available to us. We do have a kind of display order. We've tried to put new things kind of toward the top. So if it's the very first time you're seeing something stocked in a shop, at least in the progression of the game, it kind of pops to the top. And long term, it would be nice if they were sort of featured traps. And even if you show up in the Trapsmith, kind of had a character here. It was Tribal Trisha's shop of tribal awesomeness. And she goes, these are the traps that I feature. These are my specialty traps that I would definitely recommend if you're a Tribal Isles hunter. And they would kind of appear at the top, a little bit of a different color scheme, something to kind of like, these are pretty important. You probably want to check these out and decide if they're relevant to you or not. And the rest is kind of there like, hey, bottomless graves. Like, you've seen this thing before, but maybe you want the perspective of, for whatever reason, I didn't end up getting a shadow trap at some point. Maybe this is the one that you're looking for. See how much it costs. This one has had its cost dramatically reduced. I'm pretty sure it's hundreds of thousands of gold. It's been plummeted all the way to 65k because that makes absolutely no sense. For a master level hunter, 65k is already quite a bit of gold. 200 scrap to 50, huh? Says whatever indeed. You'll see a lot of costs have been reduced and stats have been increased just to address some of the poor pacing that developed over the game. As we were talking about earlier, we did not foresee the game going this long. So there's a few areas where there were things that are hard for the sake of being hard. They were considered stretch goals. But now kind of it's nice to go and give everything a fresh pass and treat it as though where it fits in the game as a whole. Like this is a master level trap. It should probably be cost an amount of gold that a master can reasonably and earn while they're still a master. Joshua asks, can the Obelisk of Slumber be recrafted if unintentionally smashed? Absolutely. At least when this update comes out, all the existing crafting recipes will still exist as they are, so things can still be crafted. At some future date, we're going to kind of work on tidying up the crafting and make it so, well, now these things can only be purchased through the shop, and at which point some things maybe won't even be smashable anymore. But we're approaching it in stages, especially if somebody's right in the middle of crafting something, then they don't get stuck. They can still finish crafting it and making the trap through the crafted method. Diamond says, so you have a clearance section at the bottom. The traps have been discounted. Not quite discounted, but things you probably know what they are, but they're there for reference too. You can kind of see maybe you're upgrading to the Gorgon trap or you're upgrading to the Clockapult of Time. You can kind of still have reference, even if you didn't get the Bottomless Grave, to know like, well, do I want to? Is it worth 1.8 million gold, or should I stick it out with this? You can kind of see what options you have available to you. Flame says, what was the thought process in the Shadow power type being so weak endgame it costs an immense amount of gold to get the best in slot, but it's still one of the less powerful types? So, well, all the mice that are weak to Shadow are balanced against the Shadow traps. So each power type has its own, power economy, if you will, and they each have their own identity. Otherwise, they're all the same, right? And definitely Shadow's cost coefficient is higher than other power types. So it's just Shadow's inherently expensive. And that kind of pattern emerged out of areas a long time ago in the game. The most lucrative areas were Shadow areas. So Shadow was the gold earning power type. The traps were expensive, but the mice you capture with Shadow are also lucrative in terms of gold reward. Now, obviously, that hasn't remained a universal truth as the game has progressed. But that's where it has its roots. And that's why when we're determining the cost of a trap, there's sort of the coefficient of how much should one Shadow power cost. And it's just higher than other power types. Arcane's a little higher than other power types as well. The rest of Tribal Isles, I realize it is a pipe dream to try to show all the shops, isn't it? It's not happening. So here I am in Elub, and I can see the Hydro traps because they're the most pertinent at this point. Odds are I'm not saving up for a tactical to move to Nurg. Either things I buy with loot that I get from the area or kind of more relevant upgrades. And then Cape Claude, in some ways, still remains this like depot, if you will, this rally point where you can see absolutely everything. But this perhaps a little less objective, but kind of keeping just the tactical in Nurg and so forth. Can make it all the way up to Dracano. And see the Ice Maiden, so I know of its existence right now too. You'd have to Google it. You'd have to look up on the wiki. You just have no idea how to possibly get a Draconic trap. There's some method in game now for new players kind of coming through it. They can see, well, how do I get a Draconic trap? Cool, I need runes. How do I get those? Cool, I can go back to the Forbidden Grove or the Acolyte Realm if I need more. This one I have to go capture the Acolyte. Okay, cool. Maybe I go to the mouse page and I click Acolyte and I start reading about the Acolyte and I have a goal to work toward. Heat Bath has been moved into the Trapsmith as well. This is a case of launcher parts because we don't know. Do you have the net cannon or do you have the harpoon gun? Either or, you could smash them and consume them this way, and it's still crafted in the same way. I think this might be fewer pieces of scrap metal and coal, but I'm not entirely sure. But I think that's been reduced a little bit. Why is the clock still insanely expensive? Fair enough. That might be some feedback to kind of tone that back down a little bit. Edison, why did the Forgotten Art of Dance switch from limited edition to only available during the annual birthday event? Yeah, I don't know. I don't recall if it was limited edition at one point. Is there a possibility to have the trap inventory automatically in order of power type, then strength? Just kind of long term, and again, it's It's a major source of stress for me often trying to manage the backlog a little bit, but there are literally hundreds of things to do. So even if we sat down and said, let's start working on them one after another, we wouldn't finish for a decade. But eventually, to have your inventory be able to search, sort, and filter. I'm losing the ability to speak. Search, sort, and filter your inventory sure would be nice, but we just need a developer who has time to build it. Is a challenge. Why is the OG Dragon Mouse so OP? I think he's maybe had, or they've had their power toned down a little bit, but I can't recall. Maybe not. Snowy says, what about these items that are crafted halfway done, like Smash Craft and Event Trap, but forgot to continue them? That's why the crafting recipes are still around. We're not deleting the crafting recipes. When the shops update comes out, any of these traps that you can now buy from Trapsmith, you can still craft it in the normal expected way. And we'll kind of announce ahead of time when we're going to sunset the crafting. So everyone kind of has some heads up, like, if you're in the middle of it, you have 3 months. Finish crafting this thing or you're going to get stuck. I think some of the blueprints, we've gone ahead and made it so you can use your hunter's hammer to smash them into gold, which doesn't make a lot of thematic sense, but just kind of the easiest technical way we could do to make a refund for any blueprints as well. So I kind of will be looking into doing more things like that, just kind of time permitting, what we have time and enough programmers to work on. Reaper says, maybe make the daily gold from the chest actually useful for new players. I would argue it's more useful for new players than endgame players. It's kind of a drop in the ocean by then. Alex says, on mobile, you used to be able to hunt from your lock screen, but now you can't now. Only way you can hunt is going to the app and notification pop-ups. You may have to submit a bug report for that, because maybe if it's on Android, but it's something I haven't noticed. Is the cartographer revamped as well, asks Q. No, so we have this, that's an important note as well. The shops update only affects the cheese shop, and that's mostly just adding standard types of cheese to every location in the game. And then the Trapsmith and the general store, because they're often tightly connected, the general store would sell things to build the traps. We have touched the charm shop only in the Fiery Warpath to streamline the purchase of a few charms there, but we're going to get to the charm shop later. Just we started to dig into it, and there's so many charms. It just we thought, well, let's finish this, get that out, allow new players to be benefiting from all the great changes, and then start setting our sights on charm shop and then cartographer as well. There's a lot of considerations there of kind of how treasure maps work, how you buy them, how map pieces unlock. Brian says, for Apple Watch users, the notification has the option to hunt but does not sound the horn. We're working on it, but it's particularly a challenge with sort of some of the technology the app is built in. It's kind of working right now, but still it's a work in progress. What time is it? We're approaching noon. How has it been an hour already? How does this happen? Oh, Mallet's Cove. Again, as you'd expect, Arcane and Shadow, kind of a lot of similar looking things that you'd see in the Tribal Isles. Varmint Valley is actually maybe even the... well, sure, let's start with Clawshot City. This is a good one to kind of demo as well, in that these costs have been dramatically reduced. I'm pretty sure the Fool's Gold, some of them were absolutely ridiculous. And the amount of time it would take you to earn all that Fool's Gold, you are long done with Clawshot City. You may have leveled up by then, and an event came by that gave you a better law trap. They were just borderline impossible for the average player to even have a hope of earning them. Train traps, same way as well. That was a bit of an oddity where you had to spend a long time on the train, and the reward were things that make you better at the train. But I'm done with the train by then. So they were basically collector's items. They've had their stats tweaked a little bit, so they're at least incremental law trap upgrades. And the pellets, beads, and the scraps that they cost has just been made reasonable. Whereas before, you would devote your life to the train for the foreseeable future to have any hope to obtaining these traps that don't really have very much use either. And maybe just a symptom of originally the design objective of the train would be like a new type of tournament that players often do, but now it's a ghost town. Barely anybody ever plays any of the train areas, so these traps are just way too difficult for the sake of being difficult. I think the original intention there was to to have them above and beyond to give you competitive advantage in trains, but it's even hard to get on a train and have people go on a train ride with you, to be honest. So they just kind of don't fit that objective at all anymore. Yeah, Reaper loyalty chest gives 500 to 6,000 gold. It's like 10 good at most. It's 10 free hunts a day. That's pretty good if you're new. It's 10 times you have to pay anything to sound the horn, and most people sound the horn about 40, 50 times a day. So that's good. You know, almost 10, 20% of their hunting is free that way. He says, I know the parental trap is something that's not discussed much, but does help with getting the terrible twos in event, asking for a friend. No, it does not. I don't know which other ones maybe would be good to touch on. I think Fort Rocks has been left more or less alone. It's a more modern area. It's a good example of kind of what we're trying to emulate as well. You can kind of see that the Droid Archmage's trap was never crafted. We always went through the shop. And as we see players go through Fort Rocks, just even as the area ages, people still find and purchase this. Whereas the older areas, like Ice Maiden, people just don't even figure out how to craft the Ice Maiden, and oops, they're gone. They stop playing the game because they can't figure out how the heck am I supposed to capture the Dragon Mouse. And so kind of trying to emulate this, what you'd be used to in even newer areas. And I think then maybe we touched on everything. Rodentia, the Huntington. Actually, no, Rodentia. And some hydro traps. In general store, some of these like grocery store type items have been added in a lot of spots as well. Just, you know, there's many places and times you need salt. It's there for you. Seasonal Garden, Spellbook base is chilling out in the Trapsmith. Zugzwang's first move, the Pawn Pinchers, even the Reaper's Perch is sitting there. The traps that help you in the tower as well. Otherwise, you just don't even know these things exist, right? You have to kind of study. Someone has to tell you that these traps exist, and you have to learn what they do. Now, the shop, you can discover exactly what they do. Even Zuriel's Folly converted into a shop purchase. The tower, I believe, is remarkably similar. Maybe the shoreline might have some stuff going on with the bases and the steam lasers. Actually, let's scooch over to the warpath as well. It's me trying to fast forward and wrap things up here, but where am I going? Sandtail Desert, please. I'm just going to click every button for some reason. Again, traps here. The blueprint that you would just buy from the shop has been converted into its gold cost. Same with, I think you needed like coconut milk to build this thing, and you can just buy coconut milk from the shop. So anything like that has just been converted into gold cost, whereas the actual resources that you have to seek out yourself, you don't just buy them from the shop, you still have to spend those. And hey, the blueprints used to have a requirement of a warpath victory. Now just the trap has that requirement. So it's streamlined. You can see this trap exists, and I can learn how do I build it. Cool, I can hunt warmonger mice in the fiery warpath to try to find a bead if you don't want to buy one off the marketplace, because it is giveable, tradable as well. It's a good example. This is the only place we've touched the charm shop. Yep, no more ionized salt to buy these charms. You just spend the gold right away, and so you don't have to buy something just to buy something else. It's, you know, it's like you need two different types of currency to spend at the shop. Just keep it all to gold. And the blueprints are gone from the general store. You'll notice here as well, you no longer need them. Should you have already purchased them, you can still craft the trap in the normal way. But the blueprints going forward, they won't be needed anymore in long term. Eventually the crafting will be cleaned up. So that's a good heads up as well. A lot of general stores have been updated to remove blueprints where we could. Even there's a few odds and ends. I think the Living Garden. It's going to be hard to do off the top of my head. Yeah, the blueprints are gone. We've even updated the Book of Living Recipes. I believe it is 24 recipes now. It's down to 20 because some of the things go through the shop that way. And those blueprints, you can smash them and get back essences as well. Blue Viper says, show the rods at shop next. She's not here. I can't visit her. Kleck says, appreciate being able to leave the tower now. Yeah, absolutely. Even long term, be good to kind of smooth that out a little bit. But always a bit of gotta choose where to spend our time wisely sometimes. Edison says, will be a new function of removing hunters from treasure maps in the future. Something we've been toying with. We can get a lot of feedback on. Didn't quite find the right solution with the last Relic Hunter season, but it's still kind of toying around with it, trying to figure out, is there a way we can make that work? Any plans for new challenge mouse, such as the Acolytes, with no weaknesses? Probably not. Now, I think we've gotten better at designing challenging things that have kind of better feedback, that aren't just kind of a complete, just banging your head up against a wall, hoping it eventually works, and you might sit there for months and not feel any sort of sense of progression towards your end goal. So now I think we've gotten better at setting up those, still having those challenging moments, but it's about kind of collecting the right sort of resources and setting yourself up for a moment of victory, rather than just kind of, like I said, kind of banging your head against the wall for a few months, just hoping you catch a mouse and get lucky. Reaper says, any thought on making some old bases more desirable? Would be cool if Spellbook or Papyrus base had unique effects. Here and there, don't want to force the issue, but for all intents and purposes, they serve their purpose for where they are in the game. Just like, if everything was useful, then it also becomes very cumbersome as well. Like, it's a little information overload. If to effectively pick a base, you need to weigh 50 options and they're all viable options, it's like, well, which one am I supposed to use? It's kind of good that only a few sort of bubble up to the surface and are relevant, and then they kind of fade into the background, and you get some new upgrades, and now I play with these. These are in my sandbox. But I definitely get the sentiment. If I kind of read between the lines of the feedback, it's often, I have this thing, and oh man, I haven't used it in so long, and I have such fond memories of acquiring it, and I like the art of it, and maybe if we can eventually find a way to have like cosmetic overrides or utilize the artwork, you can still enjoy the visual look of things without having to try to ham fist everything having a niche effect of some sort somewhere, and then just increasing the cognitive load of having to remember 700 different special effects to try to pick out your trap setup. Starts to make the game a lot more complicated than kind of the simple mouse hunting game that it is at its core. Scribdev asks about the toxic spill. Has that changed? Here, let's bomb it on back to the toxic spill and take one more look. We did pop in earlier. But again, kind of some relevant bases. The washboard base has been added here, so you can purchase that. Polluted base as well. Like I said, this update will go out. You'll still be able to craft it, but now, hey, somebody can purchase it from the shop as well. I don't know if these have received stat changes, to be honest. Maybe I should have had the spreadsheet open because we highlighted things that we changed. I think some costs have come down. Some of these blueprints as well have had their drop rates increased, if I recall correctly. Hopefully I'm not totally misspeaking there. So blueprints currently only purchased in the shop will become limited edition in a sense, ask Q. In a sense, now we're kind of doing this in piecemeal, right? Doing this in stages because it's just a whole lot easier for us to manage as well and kind of get feedback along the way. The shop update comes out. Some blueprints have been removed from shop. Even I think a few odds and ends have been removed from the shop because they don't serve any purpose anymore. And the crafting will remain behind. Now, at some date in the future, I think we want to remove all the crafting recipes to sort of unify things and have one universal way that these traps are created through the Trapsmith. But give everyone a little bit of a heads up if you're in the middle of crafting something. You have 8 out of 10 of the pieces to craft it, and you can still go get those last 2. Long term, if we do remove the crafting recipes, now that technically the blueprints no longer even need to exist, and so we may remove those entirely from the game, as in they do not exist as items any longer, and people who have those in their inventory, much like golden parts, they kind of melt away. Finding some way where either people are given a heads up to refund them before that date, or they kind of fade away and they're gone. If we can automatically refund them, or we'll have to figure that out. But it's still kind of a work in progress. We're not quite sure what's going to happen there. And John, you like to use vintage trap during events. That's a good time to bust out some old familiar favorites. Like I have the Chrome Monster Bot just because I like the Happy Birthday skin where it's holding up the banner. Sometimes I like to pull out some nostalgic traps there. Well, we are at an hour and 15 minutes. How did that happen? We should do the trivia, shouldn't we? And I don't think I've hidden the answer. Nope, I sure didn't. Let me hide that now. Otherwise it will be some pretty easy trivia. Here we go. All right, we should definitely wrap things up, hunters. But this week's trivia question is, what were the 2 rewards for the very first birthday event? To go way on back. And it's an interesting little perspective to see just how far the game has come and how events have changed over the years and kind of, what the future might have for events as well. Scribdev, honorable mention to the party hat and the horsey. Not the Nanny Bot. That was the second birthday event, Terrible Twos. It was a party hat and the horsey. We'll take that. That definitely has an answer. But what would you obtain in order to get those reward items? Technically, what were the 2 things that you got from the birthday event that unlocked all the rewards? The birthday cake base as well. Yep, the party hat. What was the party hat inside of? K&M says stress and regret. Hopefully not. Hopefully not. Let me make sure I'm not completely off base here. The birthday gift and the fancy birthday gift. Thanks, Wiki. LOL, says Ryan. Ryan is technically the first person correct. The first 2, or the only 2 rewards that you'd get, definitely led to other rewards, were the birthday and the fancy birthday gifts. And you could open those up. You could find a party hat. You could find... Was it the polar base, actually? Hold on. Let's check this out a little closer. You could obtain all these gifts for a week. I think it was a week anyway, but they couldn't be opened. And then they stopped dropping and everyone could open them up all at the same time, I believe was the format. If we go back a whole 13 years. But it's just interesting as well to see just how far events have come now. That was the gameplay, right? The birthday mouse was on the loose, dropped the gift, that was it. Areas didn't really have like mechanics or custom adventures and stuff like that. Lots of confetti. The confetti came later, Ryan. And the birthday gift had you could find a party hat, scrap metal, and 5 Super Brie. And every hunter could obtain or receive up to 25 of those gifts. And the fancy birthday gift had the birthday cake base, the Hick Grab horsey, and the polar base. Yeah, that was the polar base. So, that led to the party bot, the birthday cake base, the Hick Grab horsey, and the polar base. You got 2 bases and 2 traps. And I'll put this in the chat as well for your clicking convenience. Scrap metal, ew, says Reaper there. Hey, that used to be quite the relevant item, but it definitely falls by the wayside as you level up. Script Dev, wish you had a horsey. They are awfully cute, aren't they? That was Dev Jeremy's favorite trap of all time. All right, on that note, we have gone exceptionally long at an hour and 15, hunters. I should wrap things up. Thank you so much for joining me this week, for all the great feedback and sentiments shared as well. Tried my best to run through a lot of the shops update as best I could. So, hopefully as you kind of pour through that, there's some good spots to get a little sneak peek at what some of the shops are looking like, maybe kind of feedback. Again, kind of keep the overall sentiments flowing here. We're trying to keep our ear to the ground as much as possible, see what discussions are coming up throughout the community, as well as we just kind of pull that together and try to tighten the shops update up as much as we can to get it ready for release. But there's been a whole lot of data entry, a lot of changes and stuff, so it wouldn't even surprise me. As that comes out, we'll get a lot of feedback and we'll probably tune things a little bit further even after it comes out. It certainly wouldn't surprise me to see that happen. But thank you so much for joining me, hunters. Have a fantastic weekend, evening, afternoon, wherever or whatever you're happen to be doing after this. Happy hunting, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the birthday event, and look forward as well to spring egg hunt as the next event on the docket as well. I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit in a future Feedback Friday. Have a good one, everybody. I'll see you next time.
2.
You're a trap, don't seem to mind it. You attract me, I'm a mouse, you're a cat. I don't seem to mind it. Soft and furry, oh, and just when I think I'm safe, snap. Turns out I'm never safe, snap. Just when you think you're safe, snap. I come back. You don't seem to mind it, but I'm a fool. Broke my back. You don't seem to mind it, 'cause you're so cool. And just when I think I'm safe, snap. Turns out I'm never safe, snap. Ooh. And just when you think you're safe, snap. Turns out I'm never safe.